It is an honor to be here among all of you, many of whom I know and love and have worked with, many of whom I'm a fanboy for, and many of whom I'm going to get to know through this experience. And I also want to say thank you to the Playwright Center, to everyone involved in this event, and a special recognition of the Twin Cities, which are hurting so much right now, and which were my first real artistic home. So I thank PwC. I also thank the two institutions and the folks involved with them that have been my heart places, Penumbra Theater Company and Pillsbury House Theater. So I will deliver this keynote, y'all, and because I like to know how long things take so you don't get nervous. It's about 12 minutes and change, so it'll come in under the wire. And I look forward to hearing any responses or thoughts that you have. 30 years ago, exactly, I was in rehearsal. I was a senior at Vassar College, a major in Africana studies. I had written a play for my senior thesis, the culmination of my 4 years of study. I assembled a team of fellow students to perform and design our nearly budgetless production. A brilliant student choreographer joined up to stage the ancient tale at the top of the play, the story of Isis and Osiris, the sister-brother, husband-wife, African gods. When Osiris's brother Set murders him out of jealous rage, then dismembers and scatters his body across Egypt, Isis, bereft, harnesses her grief, and then with the aid of her sister Nephthys, painstakingly gathers the fragments of Osiris's body. What's missing, she forms from clay taken from the banks of the Nile. Using her powers as a magician, she utters a spell drawn from the marrow of her bones and resurrects him for one night. They make passionate love. She conceives a child, Horus, the falcon-headed god, who grows up to vanquish Set, their drama playing out with each sunset and sunrise. Osiris becomes the lord of the underworld, the Duat, where he presides over the weighing of the heart of each dead person, wherein their heart is placed on one side of the scale of Ma'at, the goddess of justice, to be measured against the weight of a single feather. And Isis, transmogrified by the events, emerges as a greater magician and healer who could transmute even death through her utterance. Written into a story ending in murder and loss, Isis embodied a different story of reckoning, resolve, and rebirth. I became a theater person, for better or worse, in my public high school in Springfield, Mass. In the mid-1980s. The arts were still in the public schools, and theater was the agent of a major transformation for me, going from a painfully introverted and socially doomed outsider to a young person who found their voice and a practice they loved, and most meaningfully, a community of fellow kids who loved performing and writing and talking about life. I was still a social outsider, but a little less doomed and a little more queer. Most of us were working class. The theater we came to know was not elite or precious. It belonged to us. It was regular and magic. It seemed obvious to everyone who knew me this was going to be my career. So through a turn of events, I ended up going to Vassar to be a drama major, carrying the hopes and wishes of my community with me. Vassar was, to put it mildly, a culture shock for me in many respects. My naivete was a blessing and a curse. I didn't know what I was heading into, so I just arrived assuming a place for me, but I was unprepared for the hierarchy, the gatekeeping, and the cold chill that greeted me. My fellow students of color and working class students. But I got to work till at the end of my first year of training, I was told directly by the head of the nearly all-white acting program to choose another major because I would never be cast in a leading role. That encounter with racism and homophobia was a venom strike, no doubt. It was one of countless I would receive over the course of the next decades. Yet, since I was little, I had studied mythology, history, and I had a passion for Black poets, novels, biographies, music, film, and dance. I was fortunate to know and love my history. One of the benefits of being an introverted outsider was the free time to read and research. I knew I was in a long line of Black and queer artists who had been told no repeatedly and or shut down for who they were, for the dreams and visions they carried, and, as I would learn, for the force of their imaginations as the seedbed of social change and the resulting threat to what we then called Eurocentrism. The problem of what to major in was solved when I took Dr. Blanche Foreman's Black music class and Dr. Constance Berkeley's Black drama class. In their orbits, we were gifted with the embodied experience of an alternate ontology, one wherein multiple truths of culture, history, identity, and purpose were legible and valued. I recall the day I told Dr. Berkeley the story of what happened with the professor in drama. She was silent for a moment, looking off to some private horizon. Then she smiled and said in a very matter-of-fact tone, "Well, that's how they are, young man. How will you be?" What would my choice be? My choice. In that instant, I had a flurry of revelation. I had been wounded, and I had reacted to the wounding. I had been too proud to admit that I had been wounded, but I had been. And rather than transforming the energies, I had let them drive me. This is what my inner core knew somehow. There was a force that kept me moving, even though it was painful. But the wound was the collateral damage from an ultimately imprecise and ineffective attack. It was, as Toni Morrison rightly named the purpose of racism to be, a distraction. "I'm going to do it anyway," I said. "Yes, you are." Dr. Berkeley smiled, and she proceeded to lay it all out in no more than 10 minutes. She told me I should declare my major in Africana Studies and that not only would she be my advisor, she would make sure that I had everything I needed by the time I graduated to follow my path toward becoming a professional artist. She started listing books that I was going to need to read, and I rustled around for my notebook and my Papermate pen, and I wrote them down. "Start there," she said. "You'll find most in the library, and some will be in our library. There's lots of work to do, kiddo, so get going." Centered, the depth and breadth of Black American theater and performance history were opened to me, and I felt returned somehow to myself, to my family and community, and most important, to unfettered imagination. That's how they are. How will you be? You have power. You have power. The power is in your choices. The power is born from your integrity, your inherent wholeness. Your power is fed by the root system of your relationships. Your power is amplified when you ask not only who am I, but whose am I? If these pronouncements seem cliche, if they feel like platitudes, ask yourself why that is for you. As we are invited today to undertake a vigorous discussion about empowerment and futures, I invite you to remember the following. We don't all want the same things, the same outcomes. We don't all share the same values. Many of the things that motivate us are hidden in our own shadows. We are yoked to those unresolved desires, resentments, and untended traumas. They often are the loudest voice in our heads when it comes time to dream of new possibilities. We who take the human being, the human soul as central subjects of our inquiries can sometimes be willful in our refusal to reckon with our own shadows. Maybe you want to be a change agent who enters an existing mainstream institution with reform on your mind. Maybe you want fame, money, to be the exception, to be seen and validated and accepted by mainstream, predominantly white institutions. Maybe you want to invest in culturally specific institutions and the communities they serve. Maybe you want to make your own work in your own way, on your own terms. How will you be? What is your analysis? What are you doing fundamentally every day in service of your vision and the vision of others to whom you belong? In the 30 intervening years, I have moved knowing that I belong to Dr. Berkeley, to Dr. Foreman, and to a long list of mentors, collaborators, students, and colleagues I have known and loved over the years. There is not one room I enter that they don't walk in with me. I am in many senses responsible to their vision of a just, open, and equitable society. My choices are born from that knowledge. You have power because you are not alone. It's going to be my 30th college reunion. So I've been thinking a lot about that time, and trying to remember to put on my glasses so I can see, right? And also in 1991 in the fall, per Dr. Berkeley's word, I was accepted into graduate program at Brown. And I want to give you an image from that first day that I went there. I went to the theater I'd be working at, Rights and Reason Theater on Angel Street in Providence, one of the oldest continually producing Black theaters in the country. It was founded by George Houston Bass in 1970, the year of my birth. Bass had been a force of nature, a former secretary and confidant to Langston Hughes. He carried the particular torch of Hughes's dogged commitment to the liberated imagination, the vast cultural capacities of Black Americans, and the importance of centering the lived experiences of everyday people and recognizing the brilliance and wisdom expressed in their own voices. It was he, Langston Hughes, who centered the blues in his work, and by so doing, centered Black folks' gazes upon themselves and claimed our own contexts as keys to our own cosmological understandings. His work had resonated across the globe and was beloved not only by Black Americans, but by many African writers and artists. He lived the edict that W.E.B. Du Bois had espoused when he created his short-lived Kriegwa Players, theater by us, for us, about us, and near us. Hughes was a Harlem fixture, and Bass had lived with Hughes for several years and was immersed in the day-to-day rhythms of Hughes's interaction with folk from all walks of life who populated that legendary Mecca. James Baldwin, whose own visibility as a gay Black man had made him both vanguard and pariah, called Langston Hughes a beautiful man and a weary man. That weariness, we knew that weariness. We saw it in the faces of the elders who interacted with us and in the faces of folks like us too young to bear such burdens who nonetheless grappled with heavy loads. That nose to the grindstone for the people meets the ever-revealing vastness of the work ahead, meets the personal sacrifices and the tolls taken, meets the quiet nights of despair, meets the great getting up mornings of resilience, meets you can love folk but not like folk, meets the ever-increasing signs in the postures, in the conversations, in the breathing patterns of so much forgetting, so much. That weariness. Would we escape that? Would we grow up to be weary like that? It was a particular melancholy, a particular weight I could feel its presence, and sometimes, in the smallest ways, spy the seeds in all of us. I wanted to believe we had the endless font of energy to confront and overwhelm that weariness, to keep it at bay. Years later, I told a therapist I didn't suffer from low self-esteem, I suffered from world weariness. There's a vast difference between believing the story you are told about yourself and recognizing the burden that story is to you, whether you do or do not believe. In conclusion, another Egyptian deity is the goddess Sekhmet, the feminine face of the sun, the lion-headed goddess who possesses the power of destruction, of war, of famine. She is also the one you turn to when you are in need of that deep healing and transformation. She attends your suffering as a holy state, the deep dis-ease of the soul when faced with circumstances, dire circumstances often, we can either choose to change or be consumed by. Sekhmet is present when the stakes are highest and the need to change is inescapable. She takes you down to the elemental level, a kind of creative destruction where the mooring posts are loosed, the compass goes wild, and you must trust your own capacity for rebirth. Choose to let go of prior expectations, of naivete, of hesitance and doubt, and the predetermined pathway. You have power. Now, how will you be?